CNN investigators have found that Kenneth Chesebro, the attorney who helped the Trump campaign come up with the fake electors plot, was far more involved than he wanted anyone to know. Investigators uncovered a secret Twitter account that Chesebro chose not to disclose to Michigan prosecutors when they specifically asked if he had any social media accounts. Posts on the account directly contradict testimony that Chesebro gave to investigators.
Do you have any social media presence? Facebook, Instagram,
no,
Twitter?
No. I for whatever. I mean, before
any
yeah.
Alternate IDs that you're using for that kind of stuff?
No, I don't do any tweeting.
The team uncovered a secret Twitter account from the right-wing attorney who helped devise the Trump campaign's fake electors plot. I'm talking about Kenneth Chesebro. He's the lawyer who pleaded guilty last year in the Georgia election subversion case. He then cooperated with prosecutors in Georgia and in other states across the country to avoid more charges. But he concealed from those prosecutors the secret Twitter account that our team discovered. And here's why this really matters. It shows that he was promoting a far more aggressive election subversion strategy than he let on.
The account in question, @BadgerPundit, was confirmed by Chesebro's lawyers as belonging to him, but they said that the account and the things posted to it shouldn't be taken too seriously because it was Chesebro, quote, just being a goof and, quote, spitballing.
On the day Trump lost, he wrote, quote, Trump doesn't have to get courts to declare him the winner. He just needs to convince Republican legislatures that the election was systematically rigged.
The account, however, calls some of Chesebro's testimony into question. When he was interviewed by Michigan investigators about his role in the fake electors plot, Chesebro maintained that he was less involved and more level-headed than some of the other co-conspirators. He stated, for example, that he understood that, quote, state legislatures have the power to override the courts. Tweets to the Badger Pundit accounts, however, contradicted the statement, saying, quote, Trump doesn't have to get courts to declare him the winner of the vote. He just needs to convince Republican legislators that the election was systematically rigged, but it's impossible to run it again, so they should appoint electors instead. What he said to investigators a month later was very different. He told them, quote, I saw no scenario where Pence could count any vote for any state because there hadn't been a court or a legislature in any state backing any of the alternate electors. So according to Badger Pundit, the courts don't matter. According to Chesebro, they do. Another example, Chesebro was asked if he knew about an article that was published in The Atlantic discussing the fake electors plot. He told investigators no, but the Badger Pundit account had tweeted about the article the day it was published. Some quick background. Chesebro, you might recognize that name. I think it's pronounced Chesebro, but you might have heard it pronounced Cheesebro by some other presenters. Either way, the Badger Pundit account was linked to him via a Gmail account. Once the link was established, other corroborating information solidified the theory until Chesebro's legal team confirmed that the account was in fact his. Chesebro was indicted in the 2020 election interference case in Georgia, but he took a plea deal. He cooperated on similar charges in Nevada, and he agreed to cooperate in Michigan after investigators had already charged 16 fake electors with multiple felonies. While he was supposed to be cooperating in Michigan, the revelations from the Badger Pundit account show that he wasn't really cooperating as he should have been. Knowingly making false statements to an investigator is a crime, but in his particular case, it could dismantle the cooperation agreements that he has in place. Throughout his time being involved with the investigation, Chesebro has tried to distance himself from the worst of the fake elector scheme, even though he was there at the January 6th rally in Washington, D.C. Still, he has been trying to claim all along that he was misled by other, more fringe, more radical conspirators in this plot, that he didn't know the full extent of what the conspiracy was trying to pursue, and that he was simply offering legal counsel within his scope of expertise. However, we now know that that wasn't the case, and the discovery of his Badger Pundit account supports that. And that argument that they were duped, that they were tricked or misled, it's the worst, isn't it? These people willingly got involved with people who already had less than respectable reputations. These are people who have impressive resumes and reputations on their own, both of which I'm sure took years to build up. And then they turn around and act like they were victims, too blind or too dumb to see what was really going on. Have some dignity at least. Isn't it more dignified to say, yeah, I did it. I knew what I was doing. I wanted to do it because I wanted the money or the power or the infamy or whatever. This reminds me of John Proctor from The Crucible, when he considers basically taking a plea deal to avoid being hanged for witchcraft. But when he realizes that in exchange for not being killed, his name will essentially be taken from him. And with that, his reputation, his standing within the community, and ultimately his dignity. He instead lets himself be hanged for a crime that he did not commit. He did other things that weren't great, but he wasn't a witch. But no dignity to be found here. Instead, we get criminals who knowingly and willingly and unapologetically engage in criminal, treasonous activity. And then when the time comes for them to answer for those crimes, they deflect, they lie, they withhold information, and do everything they can to evade accountability. The CNN article in which they discuss the investigators' findings is pretty long, so if you're interested, you should check that out on your own time. They give a lot of background information on Chesebro, more examples of inconsistencies between Chesebro's testimony and the Badger Pundit's tweets, and you can listen to more audio recordings there. And it's a little hard to believe that we're still talking about all of this 4 years later as we ramp up to a second election with the same two candidates, including the one behind all of this fake elector stuff. This is the worst thing to happen to our country in terms of intentionally anti-democratic behavior, at least in my lifetime, but we've become so numb to the most horrible things in our news cycles that people just don't seem to care as much as they probably should. We don't have the emotional or mental capacities to care about seemingly anything anymore. And it's not just numbness, there's also the disillusionment with the two-party system. If it has to be one guy or the other, then inevitably some people are going to go with Trump. And it's not an understatement to say that a lot of Democratic voters are disappointed with Biden. And I think it's safe to say that even 4 years ago, for most of us who voted for him, he wasn't the first choice, not even back then. And here we are, however we got here. The people responsible for January 6th need to be held accountable, absolutely. But the issue of a presidential election is functionally separate. Democrats need to accept the fact that Trump will be on the ballot in November, whether or not anyone thinks he should be. And Democrats need to understand that Trump's criminal activity is not enough to deter Trump supporters from voting for him. Democrats also need to understand that as Democratic sympathies shift more and more behind the Palestinians, Biden is alienating a significant chunk of his voting base by continuing to back and fund Israel. A Quinnipiac poll from December of last year found that amongst likely Biden voters under 35, 69% disapprove of Biden's pro-Israel stance. Those numbers flip when you look at Democrats over the age of 65. However, for the first time ever, more Democrats stand with Palestine rather than Israel. This election is already a disaster. Neither candidate is particularly exciting, but the unfortunate reality is that our two-party system, by definition, literally only gives us two options to choose from. All right? That's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and check out my podcast, Modern Context. Thanks.